Tonight we're going to kick off, this is session number 11, and the title of this one is Egypt, the Ultimate Pagan Nation. All right. Another thing I've told y'all, one of our motivations was in the last, let's say 20 years, as I would start hearing things, I've always been interested. I've always been interested in studying science, any kind of science, any kind of history. Been a history nut ever since I was born, I guess. But to have read and heard and listened to preachers preach, and the Exodus was not real. All of the Old Testament
we didn't
stories,
hear preachers preach that the Exodus wasn't real.
Well, we heard some preachers preach that these were just stories, and
Well, I guess we have heard some people say that.
yeah, these were made up stories, things like that. But outside of church,
yeah,
you hear secular people clearly trying to say there's no evidence of a large aging population of anybody being in Egypt about the time. No large exodus out of Egypt. Nobody named Moses ever shows up in the record. Nobody named Joseph ever shows up in the record. That sort of thing. Well, this is 1997. I want to read this to you. There's not a word in a text or an archaeological artifact that lends credence to the biblical narrative as it now stands. Egypt remains silent, as it always has. From the Egyptian viewpoint, the Old Testament narrative records a series of earth-shaking episodes that never happened. That's William A. Ward. That's a well-known archaeologist. He was quoted in a book called Exodus, the Egyptian Evidence, 1997. From that same book, this is basically a compilation of the editors had a viewpoint, and so they got quotes from several prominent archaeologists. Listen to this one. Since the rise of humanism in the Renaissance and the development of modern literary and historical methods of criticism, few events have been as controversial for historians as the Exodus. The traditional approach to the historicity of the Exodus gave large weight to the assertions of the biblical narrative, even when that narrative itself provided acknowledged ambiguities or even seeming contradictions. The challenge to explain the Exodus and to affirm its historicity has encouraged a rationalizing of biblical texts, leading to, quote, wishful thinking or special pleading. Now, this was Ernest S. Frierichs. He's another well-known archaeologist. He's a secular archaeologist. He's also quoted in that book in 1997. Now, folks, up until, and this, I'm repeating myself from prior episodes, but up until about 40 to 60 years ago, this was classical archaeology. Now, old-time archaeologists, they used the Bible, or at least tried to. They had a biblical worldview, and they were looking for archaeology that would support the Bible. And then Satan got involved. Satan likes archaeology as well. And so what you have here is up until around the year 2000, what I just read is the normative view of, if you sent your kids to college and they were studying to be archaeologists, these are two of the people they would be learning from.
That's a scary thought. That's
a scary thought. But here's what's happened, and this is what got me excited as I showed this stuff to Cynara, and I would watch them. She didn't seem to be interested, and then every now and then I'd say, Cynara, you're not going to believe this, and I would show her something. We'd go a little longer, and Cynara, you're not going to believe this. We'd look at it. It turned out that Cynara got as involved in it as I did, and it's like in the last 40 years, and especially in the last 20 years, it's like God has opened up the vaults of history and started just exploding biblical archaeology out onto the world. Now,
And not only that, but we have so many ways to share that now. I mean, we're sitting here talking to people all across the country right now. We're talking to all these people.
We're
in all
talking to
these
people in
places.
Alaska,
Alaska. That's
Texas,
right.
Mississippi,
Yeah.
Tennessee,
Yeah.
and that's what's available now. But if we're waiting on mainstream media to put these things out there, it's not going to happen. If y'all remember, and I told you to be looking for this, it's going to be in the future. When we get into the Exodus, we're going to be covering the discovery of Joshua's altar on Mount Ebal.
Mhm.
And it was a Jewish secular archaeologist that found it, and he wasn't even looking for it. And guess what? Since he found Joshua's altar on Mount Ebal, where the Bible said it was going to be, and he clearly understood it to be a Hebrew altar from the time period that Deuteronomy, the book of Deuteronomy, and the book of Joshua said would be there, would appear. He converted and he became a practicing Jew prior to his death. But until then, if you read things that this archaeologist wrote, he said all of Israel in their schools, colleges, and universities are taught. This is Israel. This is the nation of Israel. He said, we were taught that everything prior to about the time of the book of Daniel were myths and fables. It was made up just to bolster Israel's claim on the Holy Land. Now that's sad, but that's how Satan operates. Okay. All right, Cynara, go ahead.
Are you going? Okay. The archaeological record
Well,
is.
before we start that,
He will not let me.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Why
Keith.
are we
Go
covering
ahead.
this? Why are we covering
Well,
this?
tonight, more than ever before in our podcast, we are going to go through a lot of the archaeology and the physical evidence in Egypt and talk about that. Is that what you're trying to get me to say? Okay.
The fact that
we normally are just going through the biblical narrative of the history and going through it that way, but we feel like we've done that up until now so much that we've left out details of things that would give you a better picture of the land, of everything that went on and even what's going on today.
Yeah, and you remember last time we said the simplest thing anybody can say is there's no record whatsoever of a man named Joseph anywhere in Egyptian history.
And so
that's true.
We want to give you some points to ponder. So now you know Latin. How would you say you said that before you correct me? Because I'm going to try to say it and say it wrong.
Damnatio memoriae.
Yeah. Damnatio memoriae is a modern Latin term or phrase that means condemnation of memory. It's where it indicates that a person is to be excluded from official accounts, records, wiped from history. Then another one would be, that's also, I think, Latin, historical negationism. And that's distortion of the historical record. And there have been many ways that this has been done, including the destruction of depictions, the removal of names from inscriptions and documents, and even large-scale rewritings of history. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking a lot about Egypt, and because they were great record keepers, but you can't trust the records.
They were great record keepers for sure. But here's what we want to make a point of. Egypt. If you were a real student of Egyptian history, one thing you will never find in Egyptian records is anything that makes the Egyptian nation look bad or a particular pharaoh look bad.
Mm-hmm.
Let's ask a logical question. Were all the pharaohs perfect? Every time they went to do something, did it work out like they planned? You know as well as I do. We're not perfect. They weren't perfect either. But guess where you have to go to find out when pharaohs had a failed mission or a failed campaign, or they tried to build something and it didn't work? Guess where you have to go to find that? It's never going to be in official Egyptian records. It's always going to be either in unofficial Egyptian records that's stored away somewhere and we can give you examples of those, or in the case of international affairs, it will always be in the records of neighboring nations where they kept records. Mm-hmm. That's where you'll find out either something didn't happen at all like the Egyptian record said, or things that happened that weren't even in the Egyptian records, well, they're recorded somewhere else.
Let me move on. Erasing history. So that's what we've been talking about. There are many arguments for who was Pharaoh when Joseph was in Egypt, but there are a lot of factors that make identifying him very, very difficult. Even though in some cases the Bible may tell us the name of a Pharaoh, many times it doesn't. So there are pharaohs and kings that are often erased, rewrote, or falsified the evidence of other pharaohs. So pharaohs wanted to erase other pharaohs. King
Tutankhamun.
No. Tutankhamun. That's how you say it.
That's it.
King Tutankhamun. They just call him King Tut. We're going to say King Tut from here on out. Was largely erased from history until his tomb was discovered in the 1900s. So you want to, whoops, I just did two, didn't I? Yeah. Now how you think you say her?
Hatshepsut.
Something like that. She.
Y'all can read it as good as I can.
This is a she, actually. Her groundbreaking reign remained the secret for centuries. After her death, her monuments were attacked, her statues were dragged down and smashed, her images and titles defaced. She vanished from Egyptian history. And Thutmose III moved to erase her from the historical record by defacing her monuments and removing her name from the list of kings. See that image? If y'all can see that on the left, I don't know why they thought that completely obscured the image where they chiseled it out.
See all that?
Why didn't they chisel just a big square? You can still see it.
It's obvious it's a person they chiseled away.
Yeah, they chiseled her out. And look up here, I'm going to use the pointer. You see these parts up here? The writings about her and her name? That's all been chiseled away. Erased. Now, this guy, Akhenaten, was one of the most controversial and influential pharaohs in history. He challenged the ancient beliefs and traditions of his people, and he introduced a new concept of monotheism or henotheism. He's still a source of fascination and debate among scholars and enthusiasts today. You can see his image here where he was erased. This is their eraser. Somebody with a chisel is in there chipping away. You can see here, they tried to erase here as well. And then this we know is him. I'm going to show you in a minute. Look at this chin. Y'all see that chin? And you see these rays coming down? I want to show you something. Look at this. See that chin? Before he became Akhenaten, he was known as Amenhotep IV. He worshipped the traditional Egyptian gods, especially Amon, the king of the gods. But in his 5th year of reign, he changed his name and his faith. He declared there was only one true God. Don't get excited. It wasn't Jehovah. It was not that. He started worshiping the sun disk, and he banned worship of all the other gods, closed the temples, moved the capitals to a new city. His wife was Nefertiti, by the way. Y'all may remember her in history. But anyway, his reforms were not popular. first of all, God worship was a big business. The temples were big business.
Yeah, y'all know the old phrase. It depends on whose ox is getting gored.
But a lot of the priests, those temples, they lost their power and their wealth. So after his death, his successors tried to erase his memory and restore the old religion, which they actually did. And then King Tut was actually his son. So he eventually, I guess, came to power. Let's go to the next one. We're going to run through these. Okay. Why? Okay. So why was this happening? I think I already talked about these Latin terms before. Somebody's coming in. There you go. But this practice has been seen as early as the Egyptian New Kingdom period. Isn't that pretty much the period where Joseph was there? Okay. So why did this happen? Change in leadership, change in power, change in gods they worshipped, ego. They all had God complex. The pharaohs did. It's no wonder we don't find anything about Joseph. They erased each other. It makes you wonder if maybe that's why they built the pyramids that they did, apart from the fact they were trying to connect to the supernatural. Nobody was going to erase that with a little chisel in there, chipping away. So that was their lasting legacy, maybe. But we don't find a lot of direct evidence of Joseph or the Hebrews in the Egyptian records, but that's not a surprise at all. Now you take it from here, honey.
Well, here's what I'm going to say. Covering that bit about Egyptian history, the more you study Egyptian history, you're going to learn that the history of the Egyptian pharaohs it's mostly reliable, but certainly not foolproof. And that's what makes it hard for most people. And you have to do a lot of digging to put pieces together to come to a lot of conclusions. Most people don't realize this, but there was one person, you heard Cynara mention the quote list of kings. Well, that list of kings was something that was put together in like the last 1,000 years before Christ. And then that list was used by somebody around the time of Christ to write a history of the Egyptian pharaohs. Well, when you think of the Sphinx and the pyramids, you're talking about a history that goes back at least 4,000 years before Christ. Well, if your earliest written record came from, the millennium before Christ, well, there's a lot of stuff that has to be put down in writing that came from memory and other records. Just like, you've heard us say, we fully believe that Moses wrote first 5 books of the Bible for no other reason than the fact that Jesus said that. Jesus said Moses wrote them. Well, where's the writing that Moses wrote? Nobody's found it yet. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean Moses didn't write it. But in biblical history, the oldest physical documents we've got only date back to around 700 or 800 BC. So similarly, that's like the history of Egypt. So it's not foolproof, but those who study it faithfully, I mean, do it enough that you can be called an Egyptology is what they call themselves. But just saying a scholar of Egyptian history, to really do it well, and that's the one I gave y'all the name. As a matter of fact, I sent y'all 4 videos. I don't know if any of y'all happened to watch any of those videos, but that Doug Petrovich, to me, he's about as good as any I've seen, simply because he does such a good job of documenting. When he comes out and says something, he pretty much can, reach over here and grab this record, or he can reach back and grab that record, and he can put it right in front of me. So this is where I get that. I got that fact from so-and-so. And that's what I like about him. But the fact is, it's difficult. And it's difficult doing that as it is, trying to talk about biblical history, simply because the oldest manuscripts aren't but about 700 or 800 years before Christ in age. Okay.
I do want to say
Go ahead.
that just remember, lies can be carved in stone.
Yeah, lies can be carved in
Just
stone
because it's carved in stone doesn't mean it's the truth.
just as easily as the truth. Okay, here's where we wanted to expand on.
Keith's got a lot of great pictures, so don't be discouraged by the text. He's done a good job. Just wait.
Okay, this you've seen before from last time, talking about the city of Avaris. If you remember from last time, Avaris is the city where Jacob came to settle when Jacob and the brothers of Joseph finally made it on their last journey to Egypt. This is the area in the land of Goshen where they settled. I'm not going to reread these bullet points, but like I've said before, we do this so that when you're going through the videos, the recorded versions, you can pause, take all the notes you want, read them, take your time to read them. Okay. But this is what the city of Avaris, you saw these before. And this is the second page. You saw that before. And I'm going to hit this last bullet point. I do want to read this for you. The strontium isotope testing, and this was done in what did I tell y'all? 2019, 2020?
I think so.
This is as recent as 2020, if I'm remembering that fact right. Strontium isotope testing of human teeth found in corpses that were buried in the cemeteries at Avaris showed a significant influx of Avaris residents who came from the area of Canaan during the time of Joseph and Sesostris II. This is not to be confused by the Hyksos, who were also Asiatic, but they were from a different part of Asia, and they came on the scene about 200 years after this first influx. This first influx is believed to be Jacob and the brothers of Joseph. Okay. Now, again, this is another slide you saw last time. Here is Avaris. It's on the eastern edge of the Nile River Delta. Remember, the Nile is one of the very few rivers in the world that flows from south to north.
Is this where the land of Goshen was?
Land of Goshen is this eastern section right here.
This is what we talked about the last time. Land of Goshen.
Called the land of Goshen. Well, Avaris is a site of an ancient city that has been very, very, very well excavated and studied. Okay. And this is where the evidence is shown of the large Asiatic population. It fits the time. And remember,
and when you when you say Asiatic population, you're talking about
Asians, not Africans, not Egyptians,
and so
not Europeans.
But how does that apply here? You're talking about Joseph's family.
Because the Canaanites, they would be Asians.
Okay. I just want to make sure they understood that.
Yeah. The Eastern Mediterranean.
When we think Asians, we think Japan and China.
No.
Okay.
This is Western Asia.
I understand. I just want you to make sure they understand.
Yeah. All right. The Nile flows from south to north. It empties into the Mediterranean Sea. And this is the Nile River Delta. And like I told y'all last time, that's where we get the letter D in the Greek alphabet. The letter D used to be a triangle-shaped letter, and it stood for the word Delta. And guess where it came from? That right there. All right. The land of Goshen was over here on the northeast corner of the Nile Delta. Okay. What you're looking at is an artist rendering of a normal, ordinary house that was used for occupancy in the city of Avaris from the time of Joseph. This is the footprint. Obviously, computer graphics that you have available now, they can make it look like you're looking at a drone's eye view, but you're really not. That is an artist rendering. That's CGI, but that's the footprint of a typical house that was found in Avaris. Guess where else in Egypt you'll find that? Find that footprint?
Where?
Nowhere.
No.
Only in the land of Goshen do you find houses that are styled like this. Well, guess what? Guess where else you might find houses like that? With that kind of footprint, that kind of style, guess where?
Haran.
Northern Syria,
Mhm.
east of the Euphrates River. What do we find there? Haran. We find the city of Laban. What is noteworthy about Haran and the city of Laban? The city of Haran, the city of Laban? That's where Abraham came from. That's where that's where Isaac's wife came from. That's where Jacob went and spent 20 years working for Laban. That's the typical northern Syrian.
So you're saying that when they got to the land of Goshen, these
They
were the
built-
type houses.
They
that
built
were
what they knew.
That does make sense.
They built what they knew. They built what they were familiar with. They built what gave them comfort as a place to live. That's why these Asian, these style of houses that are very common, the historical record shows that these ruins of these very same type houses are all over northern Syria, Haran, Laban, up by the Euphrates River. Okay. Well, guess where it was found in Egypt? Avaris.
Mhm.
When did it first appear in Avaris? The exact same time that's ascribed to Jacob and the brothers coming to Egypt.
So this is an artist rendering also.
This is an artist rendering also.
And where did they think they know that this was Joseph's house?
Well, let's go through the slides.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Let's go through the slides. This is supposedly Joseph's house in Goshen. Guess what is underneath this? Underneath this, I'm sorry. Remove this.
I know it. We got it too close. Help me
Let me
move
get
it
that out of
over.
the way. No, we're good.
Okay.
Underneath that, what's called Joseph's house is the foundation of this right here. All of what you see right here was torn down and leveled, and this built on top of it. Okay. Now, is this structure here there today? No, it's simply, this is an artist rendering
So
of the
they've
footprint.
excavated the excavation.
They've excavated the excavation. That's
Okay.
right. It's a good way to put it. 12 pillars were found in Joseph's house in Goshen. 12 pillars.
Wow.
Okay. Guess what else was found? 12 tombs at the same house that had the 12 pillars in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Sure is.
Now,
And they look like they were built at different times, like it wasn't a planned thing. Interesting.
well, not all 12 brothers died at the same time.
That's what I'm saying.
And again, these are not standing there today. The foundations of all these are there today.
That's cool.
Now, here are the features of Joseph's house. And I can only put Joseph's house in quotes. There's nothing in that house that said, hey, Joseph lived here. You know, there's no post office. There's no old Egyptian post office that said, hey, Joseph lived at Route 316 of ours, Egypt.
They didn't find a utility bill there.
They didn't find a utility bill there. No. But here's what's to know about it. The main building footprint was Asiatic from the area of northern Syria. Specifically, houses just like that were found in the area of Haran. The main building footprint first appeared about the time that Jacob's migration occurred to Avaris. It was obviously built over and expanded with lavish Egyptian features and materials. You saw the original house.
Mhm.
In that exact same place, you now saw what was leveled, and then built on top of it. 12 pillars featured prominently in the interior. 12 stone tombs in the large courtyard adjoining the house. One tomb was supersized. There are some scholars that say it was pyramid shaped. I don't know where that record is. Doug Petrovich says he's not going to say no, but he says, I haven't seen enough evidence to believe that it was pyramid shaped, even though the drawing, the artist drawing of it, shows that it was pyramid shaped. But one thing is for sure is that it contained the twice-sized statue of a highly revered Syro-Canaanite Asian man. And finally, as to this statue, there's never been a record, carving, drawing, anything that has ever matched that Asian man's statue anywhere else in Egypt. I showed y'all one photograph of a piece of that statue last week. And that was just because I didn't have enough time to try to find everything I wanted to show you. But right here, you see a CGI drawing of what that statue looked like.
So the statue is in that tomb? In
the tomb. Now, was it pyramid shaped or not? That's still under debate. But there's no debate that this is the statue that was found in that tomb. Okay? And again, if y'all remember the photograph, it's going to come up in just a minute. A multicolored coat with stripes, the mushroom-shaped hair, definitely that mushroom-shaped hair was only worn by Asian people to distinguish them from Egyptian headwear, okay? And the skin was painted yellow, if y'all remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And this shows you that when this statue was intact, this is the typical size of an adult male, and this is what it looked like inside the tomb. Now, this is the photograph that I showed y'all last week. Here's the
back of the hair.
Painted red hair, mushroom, that's the edge of it. This shows you the multicolored stripes of the wardrobe it had on. Now, right up here, you can't tell it good, but it's fixing to come up in the next photograph. That's this right here. This is some people say it was a throwing stick to help launch spears and things like that, or it could have been something as simple as a shepherd's staff. Some archaeologists, now let me say this. This statue is so well written about, you don't have any trouble finding people who have done studies and wrote about this statue. That's not in dispute, okay? Where it was found is not in dispute. Some of the characteristics of this statue, though, they still argue about. And like I said, some people say
that could have been like a staff or a scepter or some type of power. People who were in positions of power always had some type of staff or scepter or something. Oops, I keep doing this. Sorry.
And because this was a highly revered person, and you read most accounts, one of the reasons they are pretty sure this is a very revered person is because they're always shown as being supersized. Okay. But because of the curved end here, a lot of people say this was a throwing stick, that you held it in one end, the other end had a notch in it, and the end of the spear went into the other end, and then that helped you launch spears with a lot more velocity and power. Okay.
But we don't know.
We don't know. Cynara and I weren't there when that statue was built.
No.
And then here is a colored drawing of, in this case, you can see it's shown as a shepherd's hook, but a very short one. And so it was more ceremonial than a real one. That's what it's believed. But again, the multi-striped coat, the red hair, the yellow skin, this was definitely an Asian as opposed to an Egyptian. Now, I had this up last time, but we didn't cover it very well. I'm going to make some points here. First of all, notice that this inscription dates from 1800 BC. Well, this is back in that time of Jacob coming to Egypt. And last time again, we said, was it Judges that talked about how the date of the Exodus, and because we know the date of the Exodus, we can know when Jacob and the brothers finally came to, okay. So I can tell you right now, the 1800 BC, without trying to give it an exact date, the exact date I gave you last week, but 1800 BC, this is the time. Here's what it says. The explanation of this inscription. Oh, and by the way, where it's found, in the Sinai Desert, there was a really, it was like world famous turquoise mine, or a group of mines. And one of the things that the Hebrews later on were made to work at, and was well known all the way back to Avaris, and is referred to in a lot of written records in that land of Goshen area, were the turquoise mines that were in the Sinai Desert. Okay, so there was regular traffic between Goshen and the turquoise mines. So that's where this inscription was found, is on the way to and from those turquoise mines. And here's what the inscription says. This inscription names the Hebrews as being from the Levant. I told you what that was last time. They're foreigners, and the Levant is basically the eastern end of the Mediterranean and Western Asia south of Turkey. Okay, that encompasses all of Canaan, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, northern Mesopotamia. That's what's referred to as the Levant. Okay, and specifically from Bethel, which incredibly is called the Beloved. Well, what have we learned about the city of Bethel back in Canaan? How much between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, how much occurred at Bethel?
Mm-hmm.
There was an altar built there. That altar was visited several times at Bethel.
That's right.
Okay. Now, why would this kind of an inscription be carved on a rock wall in the Sinai Desert? Makes no sense unless it had a purpose. People wouldn't just write a fiction about it. Okay. Well, let's talk about a few notes here. Hebedad, I believe is how they say it.
That's silly, but it's funny.
Hebedad is shown riding on a donkey. Well, guess what? You know the only people in ancient Egypt that rode on donkeys? Foreigners. You know who was noteworthy to be riding on donkeys regularly as a normal means of transportation? Western Asians, the Canaanites, the people from the Levant, especially the people from Bethel. Who do we know came from Bethel? The tribe of Jacob. Okay. So here he is shown riding on his donkey. Hebedad, the Egyptian word Hebedad means what did I tell you?
Oh, goodness. Don't ask. I was just waiting for you to tell me. I couldn't remember.
The disfavored one.
That's it.
The unfavored one.
Mm-hmm.
That's what Hebedad means in Egyptian.
Because you were telling me about the two grandsons.
Okay, do y'all remember the story of Joseph when he brought his two sons to Jacob to be blessed. Do you remember what I told you happened?
He switched his hands.
Joseph put the two boys forward to Jacob so that Jacob's right hand would be on the oldest and his left hand on the youngest. Because Joseph was expecting what? Jacob's blessing to go to the oldest grandson. But what did Jacob do? I'm going to show you. What did Jacob do? He crossed his hands.
And he thought he made a mistake.
And Joseph called him out on it and said, Dad, you messed up.
This is the oldest.
Manasseh's the oldest, and Jacob rebuked him. And he said, son, I'm doing it the way I want to do it. So Manasseh was the disfavored one, and Ephraim, the favored one. Okay? So there's Hebedad,
which means
the
disfavored one.
Disfavored one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we think that's Manasseh. Well, guess who look over here.
Shechem.
Guess who had a son named Shechem?
Manasseh.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now, folks, we're taking just a little bit and we're pounding you with this much information. Do you know how much information there literally is in Egypt to make it clear that all the times you've been told there's no evidence, there's no evidence, there's no record, there's no record. We're not even scratching the surface of this stuff. Okay? Now, here's a point we want to make real quick. The ancient Egyptians worshipped more than 2,000 gods.
2,000.
Did Cynara say 2,000? Did I hear that right?
2,000, more than 2,000.
These are deities that they believed granted favor to their nation and to them individually. They appeared in almost every aspect of ancient Egyptian culture and basically daily life. Okay? Jacob's clan was immersed in paganism when they got to Goshen.
They had to be. They were surrounded by it. They were the only people that weren't pagan.
Well, I'm fixing to make a point.
Okay, go ahead.
Where did they come from? Canaan. What do we know about Canaan? Canaan himself was cursed. He went to Canaan. So what happened to the land of Canaan? It was also cursed. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they came from a family of pagan worshipers. We've already covered that. When they were in Haran, when they were in that area east of the Euphrates River, it's either in Judges or the book of Joshua, it clearly says that his father and his grandfather worshiped pagan gods. Mm-hmm. Okay? Well, they come to Canaan. I'm fixing to change slides, and I want you to pay attention to something. Read that for them.
Except for Jacob and Joseph, there is no record in the Old Testament which indicates that any man or woman then alive had actually spoken to, heard from, or conversed with Yahweh.
Think about that, y'all. Think of what we've covered in the.
Okay, we're not talking about Adam though. Adam definitely.
No, we're talking about then alive.
Then alive. At that point alive. I got you.
When they from Canaan to Egypt, there were only two men who knew God.
That's true.
Jacob and Joseph.
We're talking about it in the fact that they're surrounded by paganism. These are the only people that
actually heard from God.
After Babel, he just gave them over to the nations. So he called out these, and that's it. That's all there was. So
think about it. If the others heard about where did they get it? It was either Jacob or Joseph. If their wives heard about it, where did they get it? It was either Jacob or Joseph. So when you think about it, how easy is it for all those brothers, all those kids, all those grandkids to just start soaking in all these foreign gods, these little g gods that were waiting on them when they got to Egypt. Now, let's be real. This is in anticipation of the book of Exodus. Okay, so I'm going to go on past it and come back to it. Remember what God told Abraham. Your descendants will be strangers in a land that's not theirs. They will serve them. They will afflict them for 400 years. The nation whom they serve, I will judge. After they shall come out with great possessions. You shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. But in the fourth generation, they shall return here. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. Now, where do we see this before? This is a part of the covenant that God made with Abraham. So Jacob and Joseph, being only the only two men that had actually spoken with, conversed with, heard from Jehovah himself, the fact that all the brothers, kids, grandkids, that they started being enticed, they started being lured by these foreign gods, these little g gods, is no surprise, especially when Jacob died, especially when Joseph passed away. It's not that they didn't preach to them. It's not that they didn't tell them the stories, but there was only so much they could do. So now let's go back, because we're fixing to set us up to get ready for next week. All right, compare. This is Genesis 9:7. But as for you, be fruitful and multiply, increase abundantly on the earth and multiply on it. Increase, the Hebrew word for increase right here is the word rabah. And it means accumulate large amounts. It's not talking about just, where there was two, make four, where there was one, make two. It means accumulate large amounts. It's an emphatic instruction, okay? And then look right here, Exodus 1:7. This is beginning of the book of Exodus. But the Israelites were exceedingly fruitful. They multiplied greatly, increased in numbers, and became so numerous that the land was filled with them. There's that word increased again. What Hebrew word was used right there in Exodus 1:7? Same word, rabah. Okay.
We made we talked about this a little bit last time, but they went in as a family. They came out as a nation.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to pause here before we finish up. But what are we trying to do? We're trying to make it clear to you that God's in control. All these little g gods, they're there. We'll study them more next time. We sometimes want to take credit for what we have as our experiences and our worldview, and we think, we would never be like those Hebrews. We would never be like those Israelites. We wouldn't be hard-headed like those Israelites, coming out of Egypt. When God told us to do so and so, by gosh, we would jump right at it and we would be obedient. And well, we're trying to tell you, may not have been that easy. May not have been that. They were a lot more human than anybody wants to give them credit for.
But the word is but there. But, in spite of the fact that they remained there longer than they were supposed to, in spite of the fact that they were supposed to do things a different way, in spite of the fact they were embracing pagan gods, God's purpose was done. They were exceedingly fruitful and they multiplied greatly. So God's plan was marching forward anyway.
With imperfect people. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Such a great thing. Anyway, sorry. That's what we want you to remember. None of this caught God by surprise. He told Abraham this was going to happen. Okay. All right. Now we're going to move to a subject, and I want to cover this. Go ahead.
Keith's going to switch gears on you now, so don't let your brain kind of be shocked.
We've covered, the things about, do you believe in the historical evidence of the flood? Do you believe the historical evidence of worldwide phenomena like a globe covering flood? Do you believe the evidence of the fact that giants are all over the globe? Well, I'm fixing to show you something else.
We're kind of going through the archaeological evidence of some of the things we've talked about before is what this is.
Yeah. And folks, what we're trying to do is say, look, that Bible's real. And everybody that tries to tell you, yeah, but, and they try to give you a sanitized version, I'm a person that without even trying, without study guides, I could take any standardized test and I was going to score in the 98th or 99th percentile on every standardized test I ever took. By all ways you can measure smartness, I was a smart person. And I can tell you right now, I don't claim to be so smart anymore. Because what I have actually learned is how badly we've been lied to about our Bibles all these years. Okay? And that's why I'm showing this stuff to you. What I'm going to show you is real stuff. The evidence is there. It's all over the world. And I say, Cynara says, this is more evidence of the truthfulness of the biblical understanding, the understanding of the Old Testament that was had by Jesus, all the disciples, all the Jews of the day, the Apostle Paul, all the writers of the New Testament epistles. They all understood that Genesis 6 meant what it said. When it said the sons of God, meaning divine beings created by God who chose to be disobedient, came to earth and mated with human women. Okay? Now, this is what you've been told, that all elongated skulls, this is how it's done. This is called cranial deformation. And these are methods how it's done. Now, I'm going to tell you this. This is true. This is still practiced today. But these are human children, and these skulls are being manipulated. Human skulls being manipulated by human mamas and daddies. Okay?
We'll get into the why later.
Yeah, you'll understand why I'm making a distinction here in just a second. Folks, these are real.
That's real.
These are real.
These are human beings.
These are human beings with deformed skulls. And there's a photograph of a child who's wearing the skull deforming, one of the skull deforming apparatus. All right, this is a North American trial. By the way, this lady in the middle, she's an Indian from over around Vancouver, British Columbia. It's a historical photograph, obviously, but that's where she lived. The third one over here on the right, these are what are known as Flathead Indians. And this is a picture of that somebody drew of a Flathead Indian holding a child while they were being forced to wear these skull deforming devices. Okay? Now, let me tell you this. Elongated skulls, I'm going to show you in just a minute, they're everywhere. They're all around the world. And to a person, everybody's going to tell you, yes, but they're all the result of cranial deformation, human imposed cranial deformation. And I'm going to show you that's not the truth. This is how widespread deformed skulls in archaeological dig sites have been found. North America, Central America, South America, Europe, there are a lot in Europe, Africa, India, and the Polynesian nations of the Pacific. Okay. So all around the world, at least in the temperate zone, you find burials that when they're excavated, they come up with elongated skulls. Specifically, what I'm going to draw your attention to is the nation of Peru. And if you'll see, here's North America, Central America, Peru. Okay. Let's zoom in a little bit. We're going to focus on an area around Paracas, Peru. Okay. Now, folks, here's what I'm going to tell you. All in Peru, and especially around this harbor right here in this city, all right here, there are tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of elongated skulls. Every little crossroads is big enough to have a Dollar General in it. They're going to have a little hometown museum. And guess what's found in almost every hometown museum?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So are these elongated skulls that are in this the concentration there, are these humans that have had cranial deformations, or are they something else?
We're going to answer that question in just a
Okay.
minute. Okay. Folks, we're not talking about one here and one there. We're talking about tens of thousands. It's so well documented that they exist. So we're not talking about something that's foreign, that's
One or two.
tinfoil hat, conspiracy theory junk. Okay. Here's one right here. And I'm going to tell you that there are reasons to think this is not the result of human cranial deformation. One is, look at the size of the eye sockets.
The orbital.
Okay. The other thing is up here, we're fixing to see in just a minute. On your head, you have two zippers that are right here, and you have one zipper that joins these two right about here, and it goes through the center line of your skull. There's not one right there. So eye sockets are 20 to 30% larger than normal. They're closer set together, and there's no zipper at the top. Okay.
That's just the beginning.
We're just getting started.
Yeah.
Look, where's the one that goes over the top of the skull?
That's the one that closes together when you're a baby, isn't it?
Yeah. When you're first born, these are not melded together. They're not grown together. Okay. Everybody knows that, right?
That's that soft spot you're not supposed to touch on top of a baby's head.
Y'all did know that, right?
The women
Okay.
did.
Well, if you didn't, you know now. They're not together. But as you age, they grow together. And that's what forms your solid skull.
You can still see where they form together, though. They don't
Oh,
become
yeah.
solid.
Yeah. I call it the zipper. The zipper's just as plain as it can be. Let me go back. Okay. See right there?
Yeah.
You see that one. That's the normal one. You and I have that one. Okay. Or at least those two. But the one on the top of the skull is not there. Let me show you something else. There's where your skull goes into, where your spinal column and your spinal cord go into your skull. Look, it's at the back of the skull.
That would be way back here.
Okay. It's not centered. I'm fixing to show you a slide to show you. It's supposed to be right here, but it's not. It's at the back. Cranial deformation. You can't squeeze the skull and make that spinal column move over time. That spinal column, if you're using cranial deformation of a human skull, a Homo sapien skull, It will not relocate. It's called, we'll figure it out in just a minute. But that hole will not migrate. The only way that hole got right there is because whatever being this was when it was born, that's where it was when it was born, okay? Now here is a human skull, and the source of it, Anatomy of Human Skull, blah, 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 Leonello Cavetti, July 7th, 2013. These are modern drawings of modern human skulls. Here's what I'm talking about, okay? There's the one that goes across there. All right, see this one at the top of the skull? We all have that. We all have that zipper, okay?
As a matter of fact, if a baby's born without that opening, they have to do surgery and correct it to give it room to grow.
For the skull to grow, that's right. But you're going to find out in the skulls that are not human, they don't grow much. We'll show you why. Let's see. In a normal human skull, let's see. Can't find it there on the back one. But on the front, you see these holes right here? See these holes? Two on the chin and a couple on the cheekbone and the jawbone.
Foramen.
Okay. Those are called, what are they called?
Well, intraorbital
Mental
foramen.
foramen.
That's the
Yeah,
one.
an infraorbital foramen.
They're all
Okay.
foramen.
Those are the holes in the skull on a human. Guess where they are on this thing that doesn't have that zipper right there?
Ooh, I didn't know that. I've never seen that before.
They're on the back of the head. All of what I'm showing you is genetic.
Okay.
This is a normal human. It's foramen magnum, something like that. But this is the normal hole where the skull, where the spinal column and the spinal cord come up into the skull. Notice how it's centrally located from front to back.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to get better. Here are two skulls from the area of Paracas, Peru. And here's a human skull. Can you tell a difference? Look at the opening. Look how big. Look how centrally located it is. Look how small these are.
And I think these don't really even show as well as like L.A. Marzulli was. When he would put a stick up in it, it would show just how close to the back of the skull it really goes. The angle.
Let me go back to
the angle of it is what it.
Yeah.
See
right there?
Mm-hmm. That shows a lot better. So now that's what we're looking at, actually.
That's what you're looking at right there. And the skull he has, I couldn't find a good view of where he did it end on, but this is exactly what it looks like. The actual hole is much, much smaller. And you got to remember now, these two skulls on the left are tipped over.
Yeah.
So these are really right at the very back here, as opposed to this one. This photograph's cut off, but that skull goes way on up there to show you that this hole it's always larger and it's always centered under the skull, so that there's a lot of skull at the back balanced by face in the front, as opposed to what L.A. Marzulli was showing right there. Okay. Guess what else is come? By the way, in case you didn't know this, in Peru, they were embalming bodies as far back as about 6,000 years ago, before the Egyptians were embalming bodies. This is preserved hair, and guess what color it was? red hair on this, what's left of this mummified skull. The indigenous Peruvian, native Peruvian people, what color hair you think they've got?
I don't know.
It's not red. It's not blonde. It's not, certainly not pink and green. It's black. Okay. These kind of distinctions we'll make for reasons here in just a minute. There is one of the mummified skulls. Again, I'm not, when I was trying to get the information about this picture, I couldn't get an idea if this was Homo sapiens or if this was something else. But it also, as you can see, had the hair preserved and it was red, according to the, look at here.
It's blonde hair.
Blonde hair preserved. It really doesn't matter what you do to the black, native, indigenous, Peruvian people's hair. It's not going to turn blonde and it's not going to turn red. Okay. Their god named Khan. Every time Khan is depicted, he's always depicted with, guess what? Red hair. Again, notice the size of the eye sockets. Look how close they're set together. Let me show you this.
So are these skulls that you're looking at right now? Okay, I don't see that. Yeah, we know.
See how they're oblong, but they're oblong sideways.
Go back to the other one. I can't remember now.
Okay. And they're further set apart. Oh, there's a good one. See there? See the eye sockets further set apart and they're more horizontal. The oval axis is horizontal, not vertical.
Let me see that. So, why do you think that people, first question, were these skulls found in Peru?
Yes.
Okay. So the Peruvian people are the people that are so into cranial deformation.
Well, they're one of the
They're
people.
very into it, though.
Well, not the modern Peruvians. The Indians who are the indigenous people of Peru. There are still some tribes there in Peru that do practice.
Talking about now.
That's what I'm saying. Now it's.
I'm not talking about.
Oh,
now.
not talking about. Yeah.
Okay. So are you thinking that they're trying to emulate these beings by doing?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Is these people, if they are the Nephilim, if these are the high, and again, notice this one,
the hybrids.
No zipper running front to back.
They really don't even have one on the other one, but go ahead. Yeah. So these may have been looked at and worshipped even as gods.
If you had supernatural powers, what about the gods of the Bible? I mean, the giants of the Bible.
Yeah, because if they couldn't do anything supernatural, I'd just say they had a really, really ugly head.
Exactly.
I mean, I wouldn't be trying to.
But these were the elite of society. These were the ones that were thought of as kings and high priests and things like that, because they could, if you listen to the oral history of the people, they could perform miracles. They could.
They taught them technology, all that.
They taught them technology, yes,
or just skills. Period.
These were their ancient gods, and so I say that when humans started trying to practice cranial deformation, they're just trying to say, "Hey, I want my kid to be beautiful.
Yeah,
I want my kid to be thought of well in society."
This was the epitome of beauty and power.
Beauty and power and
smarts.
Smarts, yes. Okay.
Okay. That's interesting.
Now, this skull on the left is the exact same skull right here on the left.
Yeah.
Okay. But here you see two of them. Now, folks, these are not staged photographs. These are museum pieces. These are there in Peru right now.
Wow. Okay.
You can go and study them. But you know what happens every time a college educated archaeologist from America has this brought to their attention? They don't want to talk about it. They want to tell you that all elongated skulls are produced by headboarding, by these human imposed restrictions to squeeze the skull, but they completely ignore all of the genetic differences.
You got some more slides, I think.
Yeah. Look at the size of that cranial cavity. Look at the size of that cranial cavity. This is another feature, and I know I'm running a little long. This is another feature of these beings, whatever they are, as opposed to Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens, when you deform the cranial cavity, you know the one thing or the two things you don't do? You don't move that hole at the bottom of the skull. You know what else you don't do? You don't increase cranial volume. The cranial volume of a human skull that's been deformed on purpose still holds the same size brain. Look at this. Go back and look at all. Folks, I'm telling you, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of photographs of these things. Some of them human, some of them created by cranial deformation. And then you have these. Look at the volume.
And I'm going to say that these are the ones we still can photograph and have photographs of, because so many of these things have been confiscated by the Smithsonian that it's well documented.
Well, the Smithsonian don't want any part of it. All right. Here's a subject I brought up a while ago, and here's what I want to tell you. This is a child. This child is supposedly somewhere between 2.5 and 3 years old. Do you see the size of that head? How many times when you've looked at a puppy, a dog, a puppy, what do people always tell you? Well, how big is he going to get? Well, look at his paws. Look at the paws of that puppy. If he's got big paws, you can know that dog's going to grow up to be a big dog. In other words, he's going to grow into his feet. Well, what would you say about that right there? What would you say about that right there? It's almost like the head is what it is, and the body is going to grow to it. This is a very common characteristic of all the mummified bodies of infants.
That have abnormally large heads.
They have abnormally large heads, eye sockets abnormally large, and almost always from side to side in circumference, they match their body. Now, folks, this stuff's out there. Why aren't you hearing about it? Why is this not making news? Because if somebody was to tell you this, you know what? Somebody just might want to believe what the Bible says. You might be induced to say, you know what? What that Bible says about our world history, it just might be true. We can't have that. Look at there.
Oh, I wouldn't want to be the mother of that baby. That big head.
Well, if you knew that baby was going to grow up to be the standard of beauty and intelligence when they grew up.
I'm talking about surviving the birth.
Oh, okay. That's another subject altogether. All right. To graphically show you the difference, this is a Homo sapiens DNA. This is whatever else DNA. These children are thought to be the exact same age. When I don't say exact, I don't mean day for day. I just mean 2.5 to 3 years old. Okay.
I just wonder how they
look at the difference.
Determine that though.
Look at the difference. See how the skull plates have not grown together yet?
Yeah.
See how the zipper runs the center? Okay.
Can't see that.
Look at the eye socket here. Look at the size of the eye sockets here.
Huge.
This is modern day cranial deformation. It's real. It happens. This is the result. These are human beings with their heads reshaped. Okay? But when you squeeze the skull, it doesn't double the volume of the cranium. And to go along the thing that we were talking about before, what about these tribes around the world where they super elongate their necks? Do y'all remember, if you go back to one of the episodes, I told you not all Nephilim were giants. Some of them were. Excuse me, not all Nephilim were giants. Not all Nephilim tribes had giants in them. Some of them had other characteristics, some of which one tribe that lived in Canaan at the time of the Israelites' conquest, they were known as the long-necked people.
That's right.
What do you think these people are trying to
So
do?
there again, they're trying to.
They're trying to emulate. They're trying to achieve that same standard of beauty. Okay? What else? They could see at night.
Well, the ones with the big eyes.
How many? Let me see if I can find a good one.
That wasn't.
How many? Well, let's go all the way back to the one more LA.
Well, that other one was good too.
Which one?
Keep going. Keep going.
Keep going.
Mm-hmm. One more. No, that one.
That one, okay.
I mean, that's a baby, but look how much
Yeah,
bigger
that's
the
a
eyes
baby.
are.
But do you know what do they call them? Optometrists, ophthalmology? Which one's one of them's a medical doctor and one of them's a glasses professional.
Anyway.
Whichever one is the medical doctor has gone on record to say that these people, these beings, whatever they were, likely could see at night without the aid of in pitch blackness. In what we would call pitch blackness, they could see. Okay. What else do you remember what I told you about the differences of the tribes that were in Canaan when the Hebrews came out? They made buzzing sounds like locusts. They were long. They had a tribe called the long neck people, the giants, the ones who could live underground and see in pitch black darkness.
Yeah.
When there's no moon. Remember that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, what else you want me to do?
Makes sense.
Folks, these are real museum specimens. They're found all over Peru. Peru, for some reason, has so many, they have no hesitation. Now, let me say this. Have there been hoaxes?
Oh,
Yes.
Yes.
Of the skulls, almost never. And I got one more thing I'm going to tell you. But of the skulls, almost never. Some of the skeletons, there have been a few hoaxes. Everybody knows it.
You're talking about the giants.
Giants,
Mm-hmm.
these beings down in Peru that where the bodies have extra bones and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm going to tell you one other thing that's unique to these creatures right here. These over here, all those skulls and corpses that are no doubt Homo sapiens, the human indigenous people of Peru, their blood type is O. Of these people here, right at 50% of them have blood type of O. And guess what the other 50% is? A mixture of all the other blood types. This is homogeneous. It's O, nothing else. This over here, about 50% is O. And guess where the other mixtures come from? The Western Asia, Eastern Mediterranean, East European. All right. Mitochondrial DNA, and I'm fixing to close with this. Mitochondrial DNA. The hair samples have been DNA tested. The teeth have been DNA tested. Guess what? Of these creatures right here, they show lineage back to Western Asia, the Levant, the Mesopotamian, the Caspian Sea, the Black Sea, and Eastern Mediterranean. I stop right there. How did that get on the west coast of South America?
Oh,
Folks, there's a lot about our world that if you have a biblical worldview, it can make sense.
Mm.
But if you have a secular worldview, you either lie about it or you ignore it. One of the two.
or you pound square pegs in round holes.
Pound square pegs in round holes.
Mhm.
All right.
All right. Is that
I believe
there's
that's
one
it.
more, I think.
Oh, one more. Oh,
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
This is
This is in Egypt.
I know who this is.
Do you notice? I'm so glad you remembered this. Look at these heads. Look at these heads on these children. Look at these heads on these children. Look at the heads of the mom and daddy.
This is the guy that I told y'all about that they tried to erase because he decided there was only one God and it was the sun god. You notice here, that's depicted here. This. And his wife was Nefertiti. And one of the characteristics was he always wanted to be, now I don't know if he was actually like this or they depicted him like this, but he had exaggerated features and a pot belly.
Yeah.
See that right there?
A protruding chin
mm-hmm.
and a pot belly.
Yeah. And
So we know who this is.
Yeah.
But look at how they're depicted.
That is.
And like I said, I'm going to go back real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that. The one characteristic you can say is they're all in the temperate zone of the globe, but they are, in fact, all over the globe.
Is it that they just dig in the temperate zone? I mean, they don't want to dig in the
maybe that particular
hard
type of
ground.
Maybe that particular type of being. It's where they had to be. But just like when I covered this about the giants, the lore of giants is in every culture all around the globe, including North America, including South America, just like the story of Noah's flood. The worldwide flood and a remnant being saved was global. Okay?
Okay.
The fact of the matter is, it's like I said, we have too much comfort that we grew up with being raised in the Bible Belt. And I'm telling you, there are people in this world right this second that are having to confront Satan and his fallen angels and the demons right today, right this instant. They're having to deal with it because they are real and they're on this earth. And we have been taught to not even give them credibility.
That they even exist.
That they even exist.
And that's like why we're trying to introduce and go over some of the details of these pagan little g gods, because we're all taught that they didn't really exist. There was one God, and all the rest was just made up fables, myths, and there was no deity or anything attached to any of that. And that is wrong. And as long as you're believing that way, You're limiting everything that you're going to understand about the supernatural world.
There is one true Jehovah God.
Absolutely. And he is God of gods. He is the
And
God.
there's two judges.
Do what, Mike?
Yes, there's two
There are
Josephs.
two Josephs.
And there's two
You got
gods.
one in your family. I mean, you got a bunch of Josephs.
Yeah.
Yes, we have a bunch of Josephs in the Beck family.
Okay. Well, there you go. It's not like that, Mike.
All right, well, y'all, we've run way over, and I'm sorry, but I wanted to cover that subject just to say that we have a real world out there, and it's a matter of do you take this in with a biblical worldview, or do you take it in a secular worldview? Where you will be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, will be determined by whether or not you've received it with a biblical worldview or a secular
I
worldview.
think so too.
Y'all, we've run long tonight. Thank y'all so much. We love y'all. Hey, Quady boy.
Hey,
And,
Clay.
we're gonna let everybody go. Okay. Thank y'all.
All
Bye.
right, thanks.
They love y'all.
Bye.
Good night.
All right, love y'all too. Happy
Love
Thanksgiving.
you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Don't do that. Hit end, honey.
Oh.